In WMUK's Takeda studio today is the Brass Rail. Mike McMinn on cornets and flugelhorn, Roger Lynch trumpet, horn player Chris Garrett, trombonist John Dickey, and tuba player Fritz McDonald. They're here to play a crowd-pleasing assortment of tunes and talk about making music for the fun of it. Guys, you ready to play us something?
Sure.
You bet.
Yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Live on WMUK from the Yoshimi Takeda Performance Studio, where they're doing their darndest to create a pub atmosphere. We have the Brass Rail. That's Mike McMinn on cornets, Roger Lynch cornet, Chris Garrett on French horn, trombonist John Dickey, and Fritz McDonald on tuba.
Hi.
So let's get started with the story of the brass rail. First of all, Mike, may I ask you, what is a brass rail?
Well, a brass rail is a rail around a bar, and we were intended to be a bar band. All of us have been concertizing for a long time, And we thought it would be fun if we could gig instead, where we could have a drink while we were playing, and people wouldn't be sitting in neat rows listening to every note. They'd be talking to their friends after work and ordering drinks and food, and we would provide the energy of live music in the background, but not be a concert. So it's a lot more relaxed for us, and we hope for our audience too.
And that's exactly how I found you. A girl walked into a bar and fell in love with Brass Rail.
Oh,
We have that effect on women.
That really was what jumped out at me, is that I'm listening to acoustic music of all various styles and times that invariably make you feel more uplifted. A lot of the music you play can really raise your spirits.
Well, that's a lot of what we're after. Our basic concept has been to play as many different styles of music as we can muster and try to make them as different from one another as we can. So we think that's really sort of our thing, is to play something completely different than the last piece.
Well, in the interest of listeners getting to know each of you, I'd like to go around the room and start with you, Mike, and have you say a little bit about the groups you've played with, and maybe what you do, whether it's in music or not, as your profession.
Well, I've worked as a builder for a long time. I went to music school at the University of Michigan briefly, and I studied some at Western too when I was younger, but I quit for quite a while, and when I started playing again in the 90s, I played church gigs almost exclusively. So it was like once a month or so. About 3 years ago, I joined the Kalamazoo Concert Band, in which we all play. And that opened a lot of musical doors. I've played in a number of different groups. But this one, we get to play straight through 3-hour gigs, one on a part. We can hear each other. We can hopefully tune and match styles. And it's really been great because you get so much more playing in a short time. And these guys are all terrific. I'm the least trained musician here by far. So that's really a joy for me.
John Dickey, you're on trombone. Are some of the things that Mike said touching home for you?
Yeah, like Mike, I was originally a music major at Western, graduated in 1975, and then went off in other directions, had a career in education for about 40 years, and then retired about 3 years ago. And like a lot of my compadres in the Kalamazoo Concert Band, came back to playing after a long time off, started playing Kalamazoo Concert Band about a dozen years ago or so. And really nice to be in a small group here where you're not sort of buried in a sea of musicians, where you're playing more chamberish kind of stuff or more combo kind of stuff where you're really heard. And it's good to play with a good group of musicians. It makes me better.
How about you, Roger?
Well, I am a music teacher in Kalamazoo, and I've been in the concert band for coming up on my 30th anniversary in the concert band. And like Mike, played a lot of church gigs and around Kalamazoo, still do, and small ensembles. And yeah, but this is by far the most fun thing I do. I teach all day Friday, and I'm always up for that 3-hour gig at the end of the day, so it's fun. But yeah, it's been a great time.
And let's hear from Chris.
Hi, I did my master's work at Western. I was a high school teacher for 14 years and then went in to teach college out at Glen Oaks, and I'm currently out at KVCC where I direct a band out there and teach a variety of music classes. After I went into college teaching, I had a little bit more time, so I started playing with the Elkhart Symphony down in Indiana and played with the North American Brass Company, which is a brass quintet down in the Sturgis, northern Indiana area up there. Played at Civic Theater for many years down here in Kalamazoo. And I was playing on and off with the Kalamazoo Concert Band, which is where I met all these guys here. And the idea of, playing quintet music and not having to be in a tuxedo and not, as Mike said, not sitting there and looking at an audience in rows and stuff like that was really attractive. And I like the variety of music. Okay, I play horn, but I also play keyboards and bass, and I did a lot of jazz stuff in my undergraduate work. And so it was just neat to have that opportunity to play something other than offbeats.
Watching you guys warm up and play, there's something about you that did say conductor, guy in charge.
I'm not in charge.
He tries not to be too bossy.
Yeah.
And let's hear from Fritz.
Well, I'm rather new to the business. I retired 3 years ago from Western after 27 years as the Associate Director of the School of Social Work. And I was trying to decide what I was going to do for the rest of my life, and I remembered that I once played tuba.
Lucky for us.
And I do have an undergraduate degree in music from Mannes College of Music in New York City, but my master's and PhD are in social work. So I decided, well, maybe this time I could afford a tuba. So I actually bought one. And I started studying with Mike Shannon, a wonderful tuba player here locally. And I've been playing about 3 years. And actually, Chris Garrett was the one who encouraged me to begin because he invited me to play in the KVCC community band. And that was the beginning of it all.
All these connections. That is great. Fritz, one thing I can see on your tuba, your mouthpiece is not the same color. It's not made out of metal, it looks like, as the rest of the band. Are you playing a ceramic?
I am playing a nylon mouthpiece, and I absolutely love it.
Oh!
Yeah. I bought every mouthpiece that I could, and then just accidentally said, well, I said, actually, I have to play at Celery Flats this Christmas, and it's always outside for the Christmas tree lighting. And my lips used to freeze to the mouthpiece for 3 years now, so I thought, well, maybe I could do something about that. And so I purchased that mouthpiece, and I love it.
All right. We're with the Brass Rail, and you guys have a standing gig every first and sometimes third Fridays at the Old Dog, which is where I found you guys.
That's gotten to be our habit. Sean Smith and Amy Smith own it, and Amy has been a big supporter, and we really appreciate that. But that's been where we've kind of gotten the opportunity to play enough together to improve. So we really are thankful for that.
And Mike, what was that small instrument you had in your hands there?
That's a piccolo trumpet. I've had a couple of people in the tavern think that they were hearing a clarinet when we play that piece, and I think that's what the arranger had in mind, that sort of New Orleans over-the-top high clarinet. So,
who was the arranger on that?
That was Zach Smith. We really enjoy his arrangements, and we've bought a bunch of them. So he does a lot of New Orleans tinged pieces.
Possibly a brass player himself.
He is. He's a trumpet player. They have a brass quintet, and we kind of ape them sometimes.
Very good. So now, whose idea was it? Who first bought an iPad and said, I'm going to read my sheet music off of this?
Guilty as charged.
This is John Dickey.
Yeah, I'm sort of a technological terrorist. We first came on that idea when we were playing with John Tesh with the Kalamazoo Concert Band last Christmas, and we noticed that Tesh's guys were using pads for the most part, all except one, and Tesh himself was using a larger computer at the piano since he has more music, but they were all using computers to manage all their music. And we kind of ran into the same problem. We play about, maybe 40, 50 tunes when we do a 3-hour set, and then that's culled out of a longer list of maybe 100 more, and then we have hundreds more out in the cloud and on the internet. And how do you manage all that? The traditional way is to use big 3-ring binders, which we started with, and piles of paper and stuff. And that proved for us to be a little bit unmanageable and kind of awkward. So I just tried it as an experiment because I already owned the iPad, and the app is cheap to run it all, and just runs with PDF files, so people know what those are. Common text files that sort of the coin in the realm of the internet. Real common, and we just started doing that, and it just caught on. Pretty soon we all had pads, and we're managing our music a lot better, and we're playing a lot more music per hour, and it's just all worked out pretty well.
Yeah, there can be an issue with flow in a set list where if you pause and mess around too long looking for pieces of music, you lose your momentum.
We went through that early on when we were in books. Because it would be like all sorts of questions like, did we all have it alphabetized the same way? And then when we had some subs come in, we would know where we had it alphabetized, but the sub, give them the binder, and they may not know. And then and we lost a lot of downtime between tunes early on, and once we got on the iPads, it was like, downtime wasn't an issue anymore. So,
and it looks pretty cool, I have to say, here in the studio at WMUK. Once again, the Brass Rail can be heard live at least once a month at the Old Dog, and if you're curious about how to follow up with them, they're on Facebook. It's look for the Brass Rail. I wonder if you have something where we can really hear Fritz on the tuba. You have anything in mind for that?
I think we do. What do you think, Fritzl?
I think so. Let's have at it.
You're listening to the Brass Rail on WMUK. a tune we all know called Danny Boy, or Irish Tune from County Derry. What a rich and beautiful arrangement you guys played. Fritz, thank you for that beautiful opening solo. You do have a lot of different family ancestry to pull upon if required, right? Fritz, you were saying Irish.
Yes, I'm a German Scot raised in an Irish Catholic family. A German Scot Lutheran. So I kind of go between an Irish accent and a Scottish accent, and sometimes both at the same time.
There's another brass band I really enjoy called, is it Ein Prosit?
Ein Prosit, yes.
And that's
Jawohl.
a German band.
Yeah.
Do you play in that group too?
Yes, indeed. Mike and I both play in that, and Chris as well.
Yeah, I've been in there too. Yeah.
Yes.
That's one thing about this group you notice right away is it seems like just the fellowship of the musicians seems as infectious as the music. You guys really enjoy playing together.
That was the whole idea of this band, was to get away from the tension that sometimes mounts around being concerned with everything being perfect. So we'll have a beer, and everybody that's listening is talking and having a beer, and so it kind of takes that pressure away.
Well, it affords us that we can throw in pieces, and just we have that variety then. So, and we're not going to totally worry about it, but we'll fix them if they don't work. A lot of pieces that when you first started playing, well, that didn't work very well, but yeah. But I think everyone, you alluded to this a little bit. Everyone has a role in this group. I don't know if they like John's technical. Chris kind of keeps us musically on board with this. Fritz makes us laugh. Nobody likes me.
We needed a second trumpet, though.
Chris, they said you're a bit of the taskmaster. You're making sure those beginnings and endings are sharp and tight.
This can only get me in trouble. So, I guess we all fill a role because we all come from different backgrounds, and part of what I do is conducting, and I look at the music from the point of view of that side of it, a little bit of the classical experience too. But then on the other hand, as we've played together more over the year, we find out where our performance spot is. What our audience is, the music we're playing. And I've modified, kind of what I'm thinking about for the music too, in terms of it's we're not playing for concert type situations, and if we can keep the relaxed space, and the end is, what does the audience hear, and do they like what they hear? And that's the stuff that we work on matching up, and okay. Not of our releases are always together, but on the other hand, a lot of the Dixieland stuff, a lot of the New Orleans style stuff we have, that's not even the style of that music anyway. So, but I think I think it's a really good balance between bringing people from a lot of different backgrounds. Some of us, strong music backgrounds. Some of us, all of us have musical experience, but not necessarily classically trained experience, and balancing it between keeping that the joy of playing from the analytical side of playing and trying to find that sweet spot. And then playing for the right audience in the right space. And Old Dog Tavern has just been like, just the perfect space. Not just even, obviously the owners work, we have a great relationship with it, but actually the physical space works for a brass quintet in terms of we can play, people can come in, they can talk, and then they can listen, and then they go back to talking, and then they go back to listening. And I think we've heard it many, many times about people saying they really like to come when we're playing because they can still talk and they're not trying to talk over speakers or anything, and they can tune us in and tune us out, as they want. And that's part of that relaxed environment that we like too, because we know we're not always on the spotlight, and it's a different kind of quintet. Yeah.
And my contribution really as the least trained musician here is that I know a lot of bar owners.
That's what it is.
And with that,
What a blessing.
I would say that, when you're putting together a program that includes a lot of American music, of folk style even, playing with a certain amount of confidence and just trust in each other and knowing that you're going to have the groove, and whatever happens over it is it's what happens that minute. No big deal. I think that's what's going to come into this next piece, which is called Creole Bells. Here's the brass rail on WMUK. We're with the Brass Rail here at WMUK in a live session in our Yoshimi Takeda Performance Studio, which is getting a real workout today. That was Creole Bells, you said, by J.B. Lamp. Sounds kind of ragtimey. Does anybody have any better description of the style that...
It's an old Southern cakewalk. Yeah, two-step cakewalk, really.
And that's, we're hearing from Chris Garrett here, and you had such a great solo in there on the French horn.
Yeah, as a horn player, you kind of fit in the middle of everything, and you either get the kind of the lush ballad solo, or you're in the background between everybody else. And in Creole Bells, I take that melody, about the second stanza in, and it's like it just must be like what it feels like to be a trumpet player, and then I it doesn't. That's not what it is. Okay, Mike tells me I'm wrong. So apparently it feels like something different. Way different.
Maybe a glimmer.
Yeah, maybe a glimmer of it. Okay.
You could not go anywhere without John on trombone and Fritz on bass.
Oh yeah.
Making the pace happen, making that perfect dance. I'm sure that developed over time as you were talking about getting this 3-hour gig. Gosh, that will make things lock in pretty fast.
Well, we're low brass, but really, like in most groups, we're slow brass. Sometimes they're a little slow, and we do try to set the pace, but we do tend to drag things down a little bit sometimes. So we just do what we can with that. But sitting next to Fritz is great because his ear, I think, is much better than mine, and he's usually got his bell aimed right at me, and it bathes me in a little bit more in-tune sound and helps me out. So,
Thank you, John.
This is Mike. My friend Greg Orr, who's one of the great go-to bass players around town, listens to us a lot, and he says it's so great listening to a group where your tuba player swings the way Fritz does.
Oh, my goodness.
So that's he knows wherever he speaks. So
Wow.
that's a good compliment.
Thank you.
Well, since we're listening here and the holidays are heading up on us fast, I wondered if you had anything in your playbook that might fit the spirit of the season.
This one's pretty simple. See if you know this one.
That's the Brass Rail on WMUK live in the studio with one of my favorite holiday tunes of all time. Christmas Time is Here. There really is a space in the West Michigan music scene for a brass band that can appear at your holiday party, can play an outdoor event at the park or at a wedding. What are some of the experiences you've had? Have you booked some different types of shows? Roger?
We played this summer. We played for an open house for a doctor in Holland, and it was beautiful. We played outside, and it was great. Neighbors were coming out and listening to us, and it was great. Another great place for it to go on Lake Makatawa.
We usually play for beer, but we want to be clear that we are available and will not turn down payment. That would be all right, too.
Well, if anybody's getting some great ideas of how to maybe enhance their next family reunion or gathering, the Brass Rail is on Facebook, and you can find them there. Let's have a tune where we feature John Dickey on trombone.
At least in the beginning, Autumn Leaves, which when we first started playing that, we thought of the old traditional Autumn Leaves was more of a slow kind of ballad. This is more of an up-tempo, swingy sort of thing, and it starts out with a little trombone solo that hopefully sets things up for everybody.
Live at WMUK, it's the Brass Rail performing in our studio, and that was a terrific arrangement of Autumn Leaves, a Vernon Duke original, rearrangement by your Zach Smith again, a talented guy. You set up today in a different configuration than I've seen on concert stages for the typical brass quintet. It's usually the pair of trumpets sit right next to each other, and you guys sit opposite.
Well, I don't like him, but no, I'm just kidding. I had to move because he didn't like me. I don't know. We just were rehearsing one time, and we weren't flowing, and I switched in the back corner, and it kind of things I think felt more centered there. But it causes then different problems with us not seeing each other. And Mike told me after the last performance we're sitting next to each other because we communicate a lot, and sometimes there's miscommunication that happens less when we're next to each other. So I agree that I'll go back and sit next to Mike at our next performance at Old Dog. So
a lot of it actually came out of Old Dog too, because a lot of the first couple months we were playing Old Dog, we talked to people that we knew out in the audience that we knew were also musicians and had an ear for that, and what they kept saying was it was really hard to hear the horn.
Do you want to hear the horn?
Yeah,
what?
well, apparently they did, Rod.
Sorry. This is why they don't like him.
That's why he's third cornet. One of the problems is that because of the stage and the window and everything, the horn sound just wasn't coming out at all, and I just wasn't hearing it. And so
you moved up to first chair position.
Well, Roger was there, so it wasn't first chair. But I mean,
I slowly got moved to the very back.
But yeah, it solved a lot of issues. And so I went to what definitely is a non-traditional spot, but that was driven because of the space we're playing in. And as I said, it did cause some problems because it's harder for the trumpets to communicate a lot. But I know in some ways it made us hear things differently too, and in that space it worked really well.
I think Chris projects a lot better, but Roger and I sometimes will find that we're playing the same part, and that's the worst of our communication. We'll be well into a piece, and one of us has to find the other page and find out where we are, and not laugh too much. So that's part of it.
Yeah, we've had some unison playing in the trumpet section.
We did the other day. Yeah. But in case people think we're taking ourselves too seriously, we have things to play that can change their mind about that, like this Herb Alpert tune.
Wonderful. Do you have any notes on this piece that we're going to hear?
Well, not really. I don't know that much about it, except I remember it from my childhood as being the theme from The Dating Game.
Ah, The Dating Game.
Once again, here's the Brass Rail on WMUK. That's the Brass Rail with Spanish Flea, Herb Alpert. I'm really glad you surprised me with that. Martin Clem, engineering over there, also having a great time grooving to that. You play in the style so convincingly. It's as if you all may remember those wacky...
Yes, at least Fritz and I, at least. Yeah, it's the old Herb Alpert thing. And really interesting. That's almost come out again lately with all the attention given to the old Wrecking Crew that was sort of the secret backing of all those pop tunes in the 60s that nobody knew about. Those groups didn't play their own stuff. It was the same hardcore group of studio musicians that was excellent. And in the case of Spanish Fleet, that was probably Herb Alpert. Great blend on that because that was Herb Alpert multi-tracking with himself. And the Wrecking Crew was playing the background on that. And the whole background was sort of invented by guys like Hal Blaine and Carol Kay and people like that. So those it dates us. We're old. We admit it. And and that's just so 60s, and that's us.
Well, John, what does the audience think when you play that down at the Old Dog?
Oh, what's that? It's that tune. What is that? And that's kind of what the reaction we get. And they might remember it more from the Dating Game than anything else than when it first came out and came out on the album with a famous cover on it that had the model gal covered in whipped cream. Pretty much, probably too much, but that was a really 60s thing, just really 60s thing.
Who calls out the next tune? Are you all chiming in when you're playing down at the pub?
Well, Roger creates a set list, which we then ignore.
Then we ignore it.
I was complaining because even now with the iPads, we were still going through 200 pieces to figure out. So I kept on saying, let's do a set list. Because there's a place to do that in the program that we use. So Mike said, well, why don't you do a set list? So I created a set list that is more like a menu that we can choose from so we don't repeat pieces. But yeah, they don't follow it.
It lasts for one piece, like the first number, and then we decide we don't want to play that next tune. So it's more of a suggestion list, I think.
A suggested set list. That was unusual to have you in the studio and saying, well, we could play this or this or this or this, and a lot of groups come in and they've rehearsed 3 things or 4 things, and that's all. That's all they have on offer.
What is this rehearse that you're speaking?
I think that's the sight reading part when we do in live and with the audience. So yeah.
We do get together occasionally and work a little bit on new pieces just so we kind of get a feel for them. But our audience is really not that rapt. They're doing other things, so it gives us some leeway, and that's really been freeing, and we enjoy that. And I think we're finally getting to the point where we're really able to significantly change style from one piece to another, and that's the biggest thing. Is if we miss a note or two, that's okay, but if the thing is to capture the style, we're trying to do a few Latin dance pieces, for instance, and we're mixing it up as much as we possibly can, and I think that's the way that we're going to grow as a group.
Well, when you broadcast something on a radio station, one direction it goes is straight up into outer space, and it goes on and on and on forever. So you all are going to be playing in outer space for
eternity.
Spanish Flea.
Oh, my great-grandfather would be proud.
What I'm hoping for is a closing number that might showcase a sincere and sentimental and emotional side.
That makes me think, don't we have Stardust? That would be perfect. We'll play Stardust for you.
That's the Brass Rail, a brass quintet based in West Michigan featuring Mike McMinn, Roger Lynch, Chris Garrett, John Dickey, and Fritz McDonald. They perform monthly, sometimes twice monthly, at the Old Dog in downtown Kalamazoo. The schedule's posted on the Brass Rail's Facebook page and at the Old Dog website. They'll be there tomorrow night, in fact, starting at 5 o'clock. I'm Cara Lieurance. This is WMUK's Let's Hear It, music of the moment in West Michigan.